Donald Trump just got stabbed in the back by his own party in a shocking new Senate revolt. In a stunning move led by Mitch McConnell, a group of Republicans just joined Democrats to block one of Trump's key economic policies, marking one of the biggest GOP rebellions of his presidency. What was supposed to be another very easy win for Trump has turned into a devastating blow, and it's exposing just how fractured the Republican Party has become. So stick around to see how Mitch McConnell's surprise move just blindsided Trump, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more. Donald Trump has been trying to strangle our economy with tariffs for months now, and we are finally beginning to see some pushback. To people who actually listen to economists, we have known the entire time that tariffs make no sense, but it seems like it took multiple Trump meltdowns to finally start convincing some Republicans. The most recent of which was Donald Trump's blow-up, where he ended Canadian tariff negotiations because of a commercial that he just simply didn't like. Donald Trump stopped working on trade talks with Canada just because a commercial hurt his feelings.
Breaking news this morning, trade talks terminated. President Trump has announced that he is ending negotiations with Canada, all over an advertisement put out by Ontario's government. The ad uses the words from President Ronald Reagan in a 1987 address, there's video right there, where he criticizes tariffs.
And this is more than just a bad story for Trump. Many Republican states rely heavily on trade with Canada. Tariffs on the country hurt millions of Americans, and Canada was the one country that Republicans needed Trump to stop the trade war with, and he blew it up in just one afternoon. And on top of that, Trump is now yelling about Ronald Reagan, claiming that he thinks that Reagan would have loved his policies. But just this week, former Republican governor of Ohio and previous presidential candidate John Kasich put out a video where he says that that's just a flat-out lie. Kasich says that Ronald Reagan was a free trader and would not have supported Trump's harmful tariffs.
There seems to be some question as to whether Ronald Reagan was a free trader. That's really unbelievable. Ronald Reagan was one of the great free traders. Oh yeah, he made an exception for that issue around Japan, but other than that, I mean, he was as free trader as you could find. In fact, the Republicans that I served with in the Congress had no interest even in fair trade. It was all free trade or nothing. So let's not be confused where the Gipper was, because the Gipper was on the side of free trade and thought that tariffs were harmful. By and large, that's where it was. That's the record. Check it out.
Now, Kasich might not be the most important voice in the party in 2025, but the fact that any Republican is willing to call out Trump for just making things up is a bad sign for the president. He has reshaped the Republican Party to do whatever he wants, and he can't have people saying no. In fact, Rand Paul said this and more in an interview this week where he claimed that Trump relies on Republicans supporting him out of fear, and if that were to go away, so might his policies.
One of the things about the inner workings of Congress is you rarely can persuade anybody to do something they're not inclined to do. If I were to recite what I just recited to you, which is basically a narrative of hypocrisy, I don't think that makes me any friends necessarily, and I don't think I'm going to persuade anybody. They have to be persuaded on their own. Here's a good example. There are probably 8 farm states. Maybe there are 10 farm states. That means there's 20 senators who have always believed in free trade, and they're all grumbling, and they're all like, China's not buying any of our, soybean this year. The tariff war with China has led to this, and they don't have the guts because it's their president. And frankly, they're afraid. They're afraid that he will do to them what he's trying to do to me. That's too bad, because it'd be a little easier on me if I weren't the only target, if there were other people willing to stand up and oppose bad policy.
Rand Paul basically confirmed what many people have been suspecting for months now, that many Republicans, especially those in the Senate, only support Trump out of fear. Now, this is no excuse for giving power and supporting an authoritarian, but it's good news overall. Republicans can't be scared of Trump if they lose their jobs, and in the past year, there have been a massive swing in public support for tariffs.
Has Trump's push for tariffs been successful in the minds of the American people?
No. No is the simple answer. I mean, I think that Americans have moved more against tariff than any other major Trump policy that he's been pushing during this second term. What are we talking about here? Well, why don't we just look at this? New tariffs on imported goods. You go back to November of 2024, the majority, 52%, were in favor of it. Look at where we are now in 2025, in the fall of 2025. 60% of Americans are opposed to Trump's tariffs. So we're talking about a 4-point margin in favor, switcheroo now to a 20-point margin against. And of course, there was all this news coming out of the World Series, right? Canada tariffs. We're not just talking China, we're talking Canada and tariffs. And get this, we're talking about just 36%, as I look at my little footnote here on the bottom, who support new tariffs against Canada. So the bottom line is this. If I were advising President Donald John Trump when it comes to his policies, I'd say step off the tariffs, at least from a political point of view, because the bottom line is it doesn't sell with the American people. It's one of the largest shifts that we have seen during Trump's second term in office.
There's been more than a 12% swing in Americans now opposing Donald Trump's tariffs, and if supporting Trump's trade war will cost them their jobs, then Republicans in Congress will have to start rethinking their support for Trump before next year's midterm elections. And even though the midterms are still a year away, it looks like that process has already begun, because just this week, the United States Senate dropped a major bombshell on Donald Trump. In a surprise vote, the Senate passed a resolution banning Donald Trump's tariffs on the country of Brazil.
On this vote, the ayes are 52 and the nays are 48, and the joint resolution is passed.
Now, this is huge news for a bunch of reasons. Yes, we are seeing huge inflation in goods that we buy from Brazil, such as ground beef or coffee, but there are two massive things happening here. First, the Senate's bill revokes the national emergency that Donald Trump declared. Many of the terrible Trump policies are only allowed because he's declaring national emergencies literally everywhere he can. A crime emergency in our cities, a trade emergency with Brazil, a national security emergency with China and computer chips. So if Congress decides to start using its power to nullify these made-up national emergencies, then all of Trump's policies could be rolled back. And if that isn't hopeful enough, this vote only passed in the Senate because 5 Republicans turned on Donald Trump. Senators Murkowski, Collins, Rand Paul, Tillis, and most shocking of all, Mitch McConnell. The former leader of the Republicans is now fully against Trump's trade agenda. In an article on the vote by The Guardian, Mitch McConnell had this to say: "Tariffs make both building and buying in America more expensive. The economic harms of trade wars are not the exception to history but the rule, and no cross-eyed reading of Reagan will reveal otherwise." The man who helped bring Trump to power twice is now saying that Trump's agenda causes nothing but harm to the American people. And as someone who's been in office for decades, I don't know why he couldn't have been saying this earlier. Republicans supported Donald Trump's mess, and now we need more like Mitch McConnell to help clean it up. And beyond the Republican betrayal, something else covered by The Guardian is the fact that the United States had a trade surplus of $7 billion with Brazil before tariffs. So Donald Trump's narrative about deficits has no basis here. So because there's literally no argument for this tariff, this is the perfect policy to attack Trump on. The Democrats won over 5 votes in the Senate, and Hakeem Jeffries is preparing to continue this fight in the House. Speaking to the press today, he called out Trump for not fixing problems caused by his trade war tariffs and spending more time on foreign trips than dealing with the economy or the government shutdown.
The president, after he gets back from Asia, something next week with you guys?
There haven't been any conversations from the White House. Leader Schumer and I made it clear last week we wanted to meet with the president before he jetted off to Asia. Found time in Asia to meet with a wide variety of folks pretending to fix problems related to the tariffs that he has created. And he'll be back in the next day or so. He needs to sit down with Democrats. Like for 29 days, understand, Donald Trump has spent more time talking to Hamas and the Chinese Communist Party than he has in talking to Democrats on Capitol Hill to end the Trump shutdown, reopen the government, find a bipartisan path toward a spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people, and address the health care crisis that Republicans have created. That's an unacceptable thing to the overwhelming majority of Americans, that this American president, in the middle of a shutdown that he's created, while refusing to address the Republican health care crisis, can find the time to talk to Hamas and the Chinese Communist Party, but can't talk to people who represent half the country, including many Republicans in our districts who are being hurt by Republican policies.
Now that the Senate has officially passed the vote, the House will have the chance to ratify the bill ending the Brazilian tariffs. And if they can win over 5 votes in the stubborn Senate, then they could have a good chance at winning over the 5 more that they need in the House to pass this. But having his tariffs on Brazil revoked isn't the real danger for Donald Trump here. The much bigger problem for him is that this is the first time that he's faced a rejection of one of his policies during his second term. And even if this doesn't pass the House, this could be a very slippery slope for Trump. If Republicans are as scared of him as Rand Paul claims, this could encourage even more to fight back against his dictator agenda for this country. So let me know your thoughts on this unexpected turn of events in the Senate, and as always, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more.